Hey everyone. Hey, I thought I'd take a little bit of time here and make a video on the rear suspension of the Cyrusher Ranger. Um, this suspension has worked really well for me. I've got about 1,100 miles on the bike right now, um, and most of those have been off-road in pretty rocky conditions. So the suspension has definitely gotten a workout. So this whole thing is just triangulated with this big sort of built-in mud guard on the front that keeps the mud off of your rear shock. And by having that welded in, it makes the whole assembly really extremely rigid and very solid. I've had no issues at all with this. It's worked really well. Um, the design of it is nice too, in that I get essentially no chain slap on the chainstay down here. There's been no noticeable hitting on this at all. When I turn this over, you can see that on some of the really rocky, super bumpy terrain, the chain is moved enough to hit a few times on just this little edge here. But that's it. Otherwise, the chain rides high enough off of it. It's actually right up below this cutout here. That chain slap on that stay isn't an issue at all. I haven't crashed or anything on this bike, so still don't have any scratches or dents or anything. The whole thing's aluminum. It's actually not very heavy. It's funny because this bike weighs quite a bit, and yet every component I take off, I'm like, the weight's not from that. That's not too bad. So I've taken this apart a couple of times now over the 1,100 miles just to clean and grease the pivot points and all that on the rear suspension. And this time I've decided I'm going to do some slight modifications to it. I consider it an upgrade for the rear suspension. The rear shock that comes on the bike here, I've had absolutely zero trouble with. As you can see, it still literally looks like brand new. And to add any air or do anything, it hasn't leaked. It hasn't done anything wrong. It's actually a really nice little shock. DNM, I'm not familiar with that company, but it's a good shock. Real happy with it. I just happen to have a rock shock here, brand new, out of the box, that's been sitting around here for a while. And I may, just for the heck of it, put on the rock shock on the rear, just to see if there's any difference, see if I like it better. Actually, this is a little bit nicer shock than the rock shocks, in that it has the lockout, and it's got the adjustment on the rebound. The rock shock actually only has rebound here, no lockout on it, but that's fine because I never use the lockout on the rear of this bike, so not an issue. But let me get the camera set up here, and I'll show you what I'm changing on some of the bushings and all that, bushings, bearings, whatever you want to call them, on the rear of this bike here. We'll just start with this. This is your shock pivots off of this. You've got a pivot down here off of the rear swing arm, and then this goes up to the frame below the shock. So this is a nice unit here. These come with these kind of bushings, which it's essentially a copper plated aluminum that then has like almost an impregnated Teflon sort of surface to it. Pretty common style of bearing. They work well. They hold up for quite a while. This has been no issue whatsoever with this as far as wear or anything. But what I immediately noticed for the first time I took this apart was that two of these. There's one on either side here. And you've got just that much bearing surface on the pin here. You can see by the slight little wear marks here that that's where your bearing surfaces are. So rather than put those back in, I bought some newer, if I recall, they're 18 by 20. Yeah, 18 by 20. These are made in Italy. There's a model number for you if you want to pick these up. But essentially the same bushing bearing, but instead of being that long, it's more than twice the surface area. So when you've got let me open up this other one here. When you've got a couple of these in, you're almost covering the entire inner surface with a bush like that. So just more surface area, more stable, less wear, all of that. So I've already pushed the one into this. These can just be pushed in they can be removed easily by hand and also pushed back in by hand. They're a little firm, but they're not bad. So just take one of these. I'm not going to push this in yet because I need to put a light coating of oil to get that to go and all. But that'll just push in, and then your pin rides inside that. There are also a pair of small bushings, similar design, just much, much smaller, that go in a pivot point on this guy here. And they go up here. Just like the larger ones, when put together, they don't take up the entire surface, inner surface of that piece. And so I decided I'd go with a solid bushing like this. It also has like a Teflon coating on the inside. I'll still put a little grease on them as I assemble, just to keep everything moving smoothly and for the break-in. But so these two little guys get replaced by one bigger guy. One other thing that I forgot to mention here that I'm going to point out, the bolt that goes through here, which your shock pivots on, it's the lower shock point. Actually, this would go forward. This bolt is threaded all the way, and you know, your shock pivots on that slightly. And so I don't really like that. I never like to have any sort of pivot where you've got threads. So I found another bolt. I probably have an advantage over most of you because I have huge number of bolt bins and all of that. But I found the correct bolt with a shoulder that's big enough that this is going to be on a nice smooth surface instead of on the threads. And I would, if you're able to do that as an upgrade when you get taking yours apart and all that, I would definitely do that. It's just it's a better connection there. Okay, so I have this back together. Everything went together nicely. The new bushings took 100% of the play out of this. I mean, it is rock solid now, side to side, up and down. There's nothing, and yet it still moves very smoothly. So that's looking really good. I think that'll be a nice upgrade for the rear suspension here after 1,000 miles. I went ahead and just put the stock shock back on because it's working so nicely. There's really no reason to mess with it. All the mud and all the rocks and everything I've been riding through, and I don't have any chips whatsoever on the inside of this combination fender swing arm support here. So I'm assuming that this just feels like a thick coating on this, and I'm assuming that it's a powder coat. It's got to be. I don't think anything else would hold up that well. But no chips, no anything in this. And I've rode through a lot of pretty heavy brush as well, and no scratches or anything, decals, nothing's moving. So whatever they coated this with is holding up incredibly well. Same with the green paint. Really super durable. So I think when it gets time to actually rebuild your rear suspension here, doing an upgrade to those wider bushings will definitely firm up everything and get you back to like new on the suspension. So that's my suggestion on this. I think it's going to work out really well. Everything's super tight now and moves smoothly. So that's what you're looking for. So thanks. Hey, appreciate you watching.